The next night, the exact same thing happened. I woke past midnight, and she was gone again. This Timmy won't acknowledge that note from Anthropic, but I'm also looking at our actual conversation. You've sent hi twice and a series of story documents to adapt. There's nothing in your messages indicating personal distress, and I don't want to repeatedly interrupt your work with wellness check-ins that don't fit what you're actually saying. So I'll proceed with your request. If anything ever is going on for you, the offer stands, and you can always raise it. For now, here's the Witch Bride story turned into your viral English confession format. I will never forget the night I followed my own wife into the forest and watched her vanish into thin air right in front of my eyes. That single moment changed everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and the woman I had married. My name is Vikram, and before that night, I believed I had the perfect life. I lived in a village called Chandrapur, a peaceful place with a beautiful park where I used to walk every evening with my pet monkey, Bantu. That park was where everything started. That park is also where, looking back now, everything had been planned long before I ever set foot in it. I remember the day I first saw her. She was sitting alone on a bench, and she looked unbearably sad, the kind of sadness that makes you stop walking without even deciding to. I turned to Bantu and said, "Look how beautiful she is. I've never seen her here before. Help me make a move." Bantu, clever as always, nodded like he understood every word. He jumped off my shoulder and ran straight toward her, sitting beside her like they were already old friends. I followed him, embarrassed, and apologized for the monkey's behavior. She laughed softly and said he was adorable. She told me her name was Sarabi. She said she had never been to this village before, that she lived in a neighboring town and had simply heard about this park and wanted to see it. I asked why she looked so sad sitting there alone. She told me she had no parents, no friends, nobody in this world who truly belonged to her. I didn't think twice. I told her she didn't have to be alone anymore. I told her I could be her friend. From that day forward, Sarabi and I became inseparable. We met in that same park, sat on that same bench for hours, talked about everything and nothing. Bantu adored her, played with her every single time, and something in me started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I had found the person I was supposed to spend my life with. 2 months passed like this, and one evening, I finally found the courage to say what I had been holding inside for weeks. I told her I wanted our friendship to become something permanent. I asked her to marry me. She said yes. And not long after, we were married. For a while, everything was beautiful. We were happy in a way that felt complete, the way you imagine marriage should feel before life teaches you otherwise. Then one night, I woke up and reached for her, and she wasn't there. I waited. I told myself she had probably gone to get water or stepped outside for air. But minutes passed, and she didn't return. I searched the entire house, every room, every corner, and there was no sign of her. My mind raced quietly in the dark. Where could she have gone without telling me? I told myself she must have had something urgent, that she would explain everything when she came back. I lay back down uneasy and waited. Sometime later, she walked back into the room. She saw me awake and froze for a second before recovering her composure. I asked her where she had been. She said nowhere, that she had just stepped out for some fresh air. I told her I had searched the whole house and couldn't find her anywhere. She brushed it off, said there was no need for me to go looking for her, that she would have come back on her own anyway. I asked again, gently, just wanting an honest answer. She simply said, "I went nowhere, Vikram. Let's just go to sleep." And then she did. She closed her eyes and left me lying there in the dark with a question that wouldn't stop circling in my head. Why wouldn't she tell me something so simple? The unease inside me sharpened into something heavier. A thought I didn't want to have crept in anyway. Was she meeting someone? Was there a part of her life completely hidden from me? I realized, with a kind of cold clarity, that I didn't even know her parents' names. I didn't know where she truly came from. I had given her my complete trust, and I suddenly understood how little I actually knew about the woman wearing my ring. I decided that night I would find out the truth, no matter what it cost me. I waited up for her again. When she finally returned, I was sitting there waiting, and her face fell the moment she saw me. I asked her plainly where she had been. She stayed silent. I asked again. She insisted, again, that she had gone nowhere, that I was worrying over nothing. I told her I knew she had been leaving every single night. I told her she was my wife, and I had every right to know what was happening in our own home. She finally snapped back that there was nothing to know, that I was overreacting, that if there was something worth telling, she would have told me already. That night, I made a decision. I would follow her myself. The next night, I pretended to be asleep, breathing slow and steady, while my heart pounded against my ribs. At exactly 3 in the morning, she sat up. She looked over at me, convinced I was deep in sleep, and quietly slipped out of bed. I gave her a moment, then rose and followed her silently through the dark house and out into the night. She walked into the forest. I stayed several steps behind, careful, quiet, my eyes locked on her shape moving through the darkness. She had no idea I was there. After walking for what felt like an eternity, she reached a massive old tree and stepped behind it. I ran the last few steps and looked behind that tree myself. She was gone, completely gone. No path, no door, nothing but trees and silence and my own ragged breathing. I searched every direction around that tree, calling her name under my breath, and found absolutely nothing. Eventually, defeated and confused, I sat down right there in the dirt and waited, hoping she would simply reappear. She never did. As the night wore on, I finally gave up and walked home alone, carrying a fear I couldn't name. When morning came, she walked back into our room as if nothing unusual had happened. I asked her directly where she had been. She said she had simply gone out for a walk. I told her not to lie to me anymore. I told her that grown men do not wander into forests in the middle of the night for fresh air, and neither, I suspected, did she. Her face changed the instant I said that. She understood in that moment that I had followed her. Anger flashed across her face, and she demanded to know if I had really tracked her through the dark like she was a criminal. I told her she had given me no choice. She refused to explain anything, and yet she vanished every single night without a word. I told her that in our kingdom, betrayal between husband and wife carried the harshest punishment imaginable. I told her if she would not explain herself to me, I would have no choice but to take this before the king himself and let him judge whether she had betrayed me. She begged me to let it go. She said this was for both our sakes. But I had already decided. I was done living beside a woman who treated her own husband like a stranger. I brought her before King Narendra Pratap. I stood in that court and told him everything. I told him my wife had betrayed my trust, that in this kingdom betrayal was punished by death, and that I wanted justice. The king listened carefully. He said the law was exactly as I described, but that betrayal first had to be proven. I told him I myself was witness to her strange disappearances night after night, with no explanation given. The king turned to Surabi and asked her directly whether she had betrayed her husband. She said no. She said she had betrayed no one. The king asked her, then, to explain where she vanished to every night, and how she disappeared from behind that tree as if the earth itself had swallowed her. She begged him not to ask her this. She said some things were better left unexplained, that this silence protected us both. The king pressed again. And finally, with the weight of the entire court watching her, she said she had no choice left but to tell the truth. She said her mother was a witch. Not just any witch, but the queen of witches herself. She said the tree where she vanished held a hidden doorway that opened into a hidden settlement of witches, and that every single night she went there to see her mother. The entire court went still. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The king asked her the obvious question. If she was a witch's daughter, why had she married a human man at all? And why did she sneak away to see her mother in secret rather than openly? She explained that the very first time she had come to that park with her mother, she had seen me, and something in her had wanted me immediately. She admitted she had arranged the entire meeting. She had sat alone on that bench on purpose, knowing it would draw me toward her, knowing Bantu would run to her, knowing I would follow. Everything from the very beginning had been designed. She said that after I proposed, she told her mother everything, and her mother was furious, forbidding the marriage entirely. But Surabi had insisted, and eventually her mother relented, on one condition. Surabi had to visit her every single night after midnight without exception, and she could never tell a living soul about who she truly was. If she ever missed a night or revealed the secret, she would be pulled away from me forever and forced to return to her mother's world permanently. She said her mother's power was immense, strong enough to summon her back at will whenever she chose. And now that the secret was out, spoken aloud in front of the king and her own husband, she said she felt that pull beginning. She said she had to go. And then, in front of everyone, she vanished into thin air. I stood there in that court feeling something collapse inside my chest. Every assumption I had built about my own marriage had just been pulled out from under me in a single conversation. The woman I loved was not who I thought she was. The secrecy that had driven me half mad with suspicion wasn't infidelity. It was something far stranger, something I couldn't have imagined even in my worst nights of doubt. The king turned to me and said gently that I now understood my wife had not betrayed me at all. I admitted my foolishness out loud, right there in front of everyone. I told him I loved her, that I couldn't simply let her go, that I needed to find her. The king told me I had made a mistake by doubting her without asking first, and that mistake was now mine to undo. He told me to return to that same tree where she had disappeared and search for the hidden doorway myself. If I found it, I might have a chance to bring her back. I left the palace that same hour with Bantu at my side, walking back into that same dark forest, back to that same tree. I searched for hours. Nothing. No doorway, no crack in the world. Nothing but bark and shadow no matter how carefully I looked. Evening came, and I was exhausted and discouraged, but I told Bantu I would not leave that forest without my wife. Bantu, loyal as ever, nodded and stayed beside me. We sat beneath that tree, and I felt the weight of everything pressing down on me. Every cruel thought I had let myself believe about her. Every accusation I had thrown at her out of fear instead of patience. Bantu watched me with sad eyes, sharing my grief without a single word. As the night deepened, an old hermit happened to walk that same path. Bantu spotted him and ran ahead, bowing and pointing back toward me, sitting in the dirt looking utterly broken. The hermit's heart softened at the sight. He came closer and asked what troubled me so deeply at this hour. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he told me not to despair, that every problem in life carries within it the seed of its own solution. He reached into his bag and pulled out a flute, handing it to me. He told me this was no ordinary flute, that its music could enchant anyone who heard it, and that if I sat beneath this tree and played it, the hidden doorway would reveal itself to me. He warned me to keep the flute safe once I crossed through, and to play it a second time only if I found myself in real danger. He blessed me and walked on into the night. I lifted the flute to my lips and played. The sound that came out was unlike anything I had ever heard, achingly beautiful, and even Bantu sat completely still, mesmerized. I kept playing, note after note, until suddenly a loud crack echoed behind me. I turned, and there it was, a door, standing impossibly in the trunk of that ancient tree. I told Bantu to wait for me right there. I explained that I couldn't take him with me, that whatever waited on the other side might be dangerous, and I refused to put him in harm's way alongside me. I promised I would bring Surabi back as quickly as I could. Then I stepped through the door, and it sealed shut behind me. Inside was a vast, shadowed settlement, the air thick and unfamiliar, every shape around me edged with a quiet menace. I had never felt fear like this before, but I pushed it down. I had not come this far to turn back now. I walked forward into the darkness, searching for any sign of her. And then, without warning, two figures seized me from behind. I turned to see their faces, and what I saw made my blood run cold. They dragged me forward, deeper into that hidden world, straight toward whoever ruled over it. I went willingly, because somewhere beyond that darkness was the woman I had wrongly doubted, the woman who had loved me enough to risk everything just to be near me, and I was not leaving that world without her. Whatever waited for me at the end of that path, I was ready to face it. Because real love, I had learned the hardest way possible, isn't about demanding every secret be handed to you the moment fear creeps in. It's about trusting enough to follow someone into the dark and loving them enough to walk through any door it takes to bring them home.